When we set out to get better as composers, we often think of all the music theory or technical aspects we need to tackle, but it can be really easy to get overwhelmed with how much we don't know, which then leads to self-doubt, imposter syndrome, or even creative paralysis. But what if I told you there are ways to improve your compositions without focusing on the compositional process itself? So on today's episode, I want to unpack 4 ways that you can get better at writing music that have next to nothing to do with music theory or production techniques. Plus, we're going to take a listen to an uplifting campaign_Q written by a member of the 52Qs community, which was sent back from a taxi listing on this week's episode of the 52Qs podcast. What is happening, everybody? This is Dave Croft, and welcome back to another episode of the 52Qs podcast, a weekly podcast dedicated to all things production and library music, where we talk about industry topics and take deep dives into the different aspects of being a working production music composer. Plus, we feature a cue written by you, a member of the 52Qs community, and this week, we're going to be taking a listen to Never Look Back, which is a campaign_Q by Gesteland, which was returned by Taxi. So we're going to see if we can't get to the bottom of why that might not have made the cut. But if this is your first time here, welcome. I'm so glad you found me, however you found me. I know you have a ton of options out there, so I thank you for spending part of your day with me. I also want to give a special word of thanks to the family, friends, and patrons of 52Qs who help keep the podcast, the channel, and everything here going. We are 100% community supported, so if you like what I do here, don't thank me, thank them. But if you want to learn more about how you can help support 52Qs and unlock extra perks like live streams, workshops, interactive feedback, and a ton more, then be sure to click on the links in the description or, stick around because we're going to be talking a little bit more about that later in today's episode. But I wanted to talk about, on today's topic, ways that you can improve being a composer without focusing on composing. We have tons of videos here on the channel, and YouTube has a lot of amazing resources about how you can learn to be a better composer, learn about production music, learn about Logic or Pro Tools or Ableton or whatever. That's all super important. And believe me, we're going to circle back to all of that stuff on the channel and in the community at 52Qs. But I wanted to really spend today talking about 4 ways that you can improve being a composer that have nothing to do really with the composing process. So, number 1, and these are kind of in ascending order, but maybe not really. Number 1 is work with the tools you have. Work with the tools you already have, not with the tools you wish you had. Whether it's a plugin, or whether it's a new guitar, or whether it's your studio setup. If you think, oh man, I'm going to get better if I only had this string library, or I can't wait to be professional, or I can't wait for my career to really take off once I get bass traps in my studio, or once I get this Midi controller. That's a trap. It's a trap, right? That's just not really true. And I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but if you give a beginning instrument to a virtuoso player, they're still going to sound like the virtuoso player. My point with that is, it's not about the tools, it's about what you do with the tools. And so telling yourself that the tools are keeping you from succeeding, the tools are holding you back, I think it's just not true. Now, nice tools do make it easier to sometimes get to where you're wanting to go. Like let's talk plugins or libraries. If you have BBCSO from Spitfire, those are amazing sounding strings. But if you're waiting to write epic music or write orchestrally uplifting music or trailer music until you get BBCSO, then you're never going to learn what you need to learn along the way. Does that mean that you can take stock Logic sounds and have something sound as realistic as what you might see in a film? Probably not. But that's part of working with the tools that you have. Not just work with the plugins, work with the sounds, but work with your abilities, work within the limitations of the tools that you have. So if you don't have good sounding horn sounds, like French horn sounds, then it's probably best not to write super exposed French horn parts. Probably, I'm guessing. Because then you're just betraying that you don't have those good sounds. So you have to work with what you have in learning and getting better with those tools, but also staying within the lines of what those tools can do. Now, you know I love Omnisphere. I talk about Omnisphere. Big fan of Omnisphere. I've slept on that plugin for far too long. But I would probably say that my appreciation for Omnisphere was deeper because I had explored all of the sounds of like Alchemy and the ES2, and Logic, all the stock Logic sounds long before I got into Omnisphere. So when I got into Omnisphere, I'm like, oh wow, this is almost like a cheat code because it's so streamlined for that purpose. But I did so many cues, tension cues or whatever, hip hop cues using stock Logic sounds because I hadn't bought into Omnisphere. But I learned about how to write all those types of cues using the tools so that when I finally brought in something to make my life easier, it wasn't using the tool to teach me how to do the thing. I learned how to do the thing and then leveraged the tool when it came in later. So work within the limitations that you have, work within the sounds that you have, work within what your plugins can and can't do. Also, work within the time that you have, work within the, if you only have 2 hours, then that's what it is. But make those 2 hours really, really count. And if you only have, an hour at 4 a.m., or if you only have an hour lunch break, then use those hours. Use the time you have. But don't fritter that time around or at that time away and saying, well, I don't really have enough time to write a little bit. And then finally, work with the abilities that you have. As you're learning and as you're adding more, work within your abilities. If you only know a C major scale, then that's great. Then write a ton of cues in C major or A minor. Really exhaust everything you can with what you know instead of keep trying to add more onto what you know. If that makes sense. If you're not super handy on piano, then slow things down, play things in, or pencil things in, however you need to tackle it. But don't lament that, man, I'd really like to write like piano music if you don't have the piano skills when the tools allow you to do that. And always play in C major. If you need to transpose it, then open up the Midi and transpose the Midi. That's fine. I guarantee you your library won't care. And nobody's going to judge you, right? There's no theory professor bagging on you. There's no piano professor who is going to rap your knuckles with a ruler because everything is in C or everything's in A minor or whatever, all the white keys. No, who cares? I don't care. I don't judge you. Heck no. I play in certain keys because they feel good under my fingers on the keyboard. If I need to transpose, then I just use the tools. I MIDI transpose all the time. Like if I'm writing a cue, like a dramedy cue, for example, and it has a key change, because you can get away with those kind of harmonic shenanigans in the dramedy cue, then if I'm going up a half step, I'm not going to just play everything up the half step. No, I am not that gifted of a keyboardist. Instead, I'll just finish out the cue and then you grab all of the MIDI and chunk it up. Or if I'm on a guitar, I'll use a freaking capo. No, it doesn't matter. Like, if you've heard that phrase, there are no atheists in foxholes. It kind of reminds me of that. In that, when you're in the ish, you got to do what you have to do, right? And if that means that going to the atheists in foxholes, if praying to a higher power increases your chance of survival, I guess, then what's the harm? Anyway, what's my point with this whole foxhole thing? I don't know where this is coming from, but I guess, when you're in the ish in your studio and you have deliverables and you only really feel good writing in C, then freaking write in C. Do what you need to do. And if you need to transpose it, then transpose it. The only person really judging you is you. And if anybody wants to get on your case about playing in C, then man, forget them. Let them go be their elitist selves. But my larger point is work within the tools, the sounds, the plugins, the time, and your abilities. Work within those constraints, because you continuing to explore all of those things will improve your compositions. It's when we feel like, oh, I've already written something in A minor, or I don't have the nicest string libraries. And you kind of, again, imposter syndrome and self-doubt and creative paralysis kicks in. But just work with what you have, not with what you wish you had. Whether what you wish you had was new plugins or new skills. All right, so that's number one. Work with the tools you have. Number two, don't overthink it. Don't overthink the process. I'm a big believer in less is more. I have the benefit of not having the burden of knowledge, which means that as I've been writing and learning about the production process, I've been adding all of the, especially technical stuff, mixing and mastering. I've just been kind of adding it as needed. So I don't know necessarily like what I don't know. So I don't know everything that quote unquote should go on to like a mastering chain or should go into your process. Which means that I try to find the straightest line between point A and point B. So like I don't do crazy gain staging. I don't do tons of multi-compression. I don't do any of that business. Because I didn't necessarily know I should be. I tell my Full Sail students all the time, they will graduate knowing a lot more about the production process than I probably ever will. But I urge them not to get bogged down into all of these things that should be into the production, because they're learning everything. It's like going to culinary school and learning how to use all of the different knives, all of the different kitchen tools, all of the cooking techniques, when most of the time it's probably just a handful of techniques. And you might need to, bust out this certain, I don't know, I know nothing about knives and stuff, but this certain specialty knife. But that's more the exception than the rule. You can probably use the same batch of tools to cook nearly everything you need to. I don't know, is that true? If you're a culinary student, please let me know. But that's how I think. I think about the production process just like cooking and preparing meals. I've used cooking metaphors all throughout this channel. But less is more. Don't overthink it. Don't overthink like the mixing, mastering, production process. Don't overthink the composing process. If you're writing cues that are going to, go underneath a sneaker commercial, then it doesn't have to be Rachmaninoff level of harmonic gymnastics. In fact, that will probably earn you a rejection. If you're writing a cue that's going to go underneath, couples arguing in a dating show, you don't try to feel like it has to live up to John Williams' level of thematic gravitas. It doesn't. It's a fight on a dating show, and your music is super, super low in the mix, and it's very much not the most important thing happening. I mean, it needs to be there. It needs to support the emotional tenor of the scene and all of that, but your cue is not the main attraction. And so pouring all of this kind of creative angst into, it's got to be, no, you're overthinking it. You're way overthinking it. Take the straight line in your creative process, in your production process, your mixing and mastering. I mean, so many melodies just need to be 3 or 4 notes, really. Just a handful of notes. One measure, repeat with a variation, repeat with a variation, wash, rinse, repeat. Literally. Okay, not literally. Repeat literally, but washing and rinsing notes. Is that resonating with you? You're watching all of these YouTube videos, and if you're watching me right now, if you're listening to me on the podcast, it's because you want to get better. You're interested in the production music process, and you want to improve yourself, improve your work, get placements, have a career, all of those things. But the more you learn, then it just kind of globs onto your process. And it's like, and by the end of it, by the end of a 20 or 30 year career, because we are lifelong learners here. If you're watching the channel, chances are you're a lifelong learner and you're one of us. But imagine after 30 years of learning and it's just, you're just this big, giant, rolling mass of information and trying to parse it out and this cue needs that. No, just keep it simple. Find the straight line, the shortest distance from where you are and where you want to be. And if that's in your creative process, if that is in your technical process, mixing and mastering, don't overthink it. Don't overthink it. Less is more. Less is more in your tracks. The number of tracks you put in a production. There was a poll that went up recently over at 52 Cues. How many tracks do you tend to put into your productions? And it was like 1 to 9 or 9 to 16 and 17 to 30. And mine are usually 9 to 16. I've seen some of these productions and some of these YouTubers and I'm just wow, the regions are razor thin. I'm like, how is all of that really necessary? I mean, the music sounds amazing. Can't imagine the headache it would be to mix all of that, but I tend to stay less than 20 tracks per cue. Now, admittedly, the type of music I'm writing, tension music with, a bunch of omnisphere instances. I mean, those tend to be pretty, an omnisphere patch tends to be relatively dense. So we're not talking about just one violin 1, violin 2 and violas. And, you can have 5 tracks just in your strings versus using a string patch or an ensemble patch like Project Sam or whatever. Symphobia specifically. I get that. But looking at some of these productions, they're so dense. And man, I don't know the sustainability of those types of really dense productions over the course of a 30 or 40-year career, and thousands of cues. I don't know how sustainable that is. If you're dumping 60 and 70 tracks on each cue. Now, I think if you were doing like scoring work, or if you were, making art music, if you will, then maybe that's a different consideration. But to have so much kind of pouring into each individual cue, I don't see how that's sustainable. So I don't overthink it. Less is more. That means less tracks, less process, less creative angst into each progression, melody, whatever, creative choices. Just find the straight line and go. All right. So number one, work with the tools you have. Number two, don't overthink it. All right. So number three, the third way that you can improve writing music without focusing on theory or production techniques is put yourself out there. Put your music out there. Write something and put it out there. And if you don't have a library home for it, then find a way to get honest, candid feedback. And I don't mean throwing it up on YouTube and answering, necessarily answering internet strangers who sometimes just are vicious for no reason. Yeah, parenthetically, I don't understand why some people are just vicious for no reason. I saw a comment on an Instagram post, on one of the taxi Instagram posts, and they were bagging on my glasses. Like really, really vicious. And so I just said, hey, man, like he thought these were fake. And I'm telling you, these are not fake. I've had astigmatism nearly my entire life. I've been wearing glasses since I can remember, elementary school, maybe middle school. And so, no, these are not cosmetic. But even if they were, like, what do you hope to have happened? What do you hope to have happened by attacking an internet stranger? Unprovoked. I don't know if it's their insecurities about their own glasses or whatever. I don't know. Anyway, I just thanked him. I said, hey, appreciate the comment. They're not fake, but yeah, you be you. All good. So I see no reason to say nasty things on the internet to complete strangers. Like, what's the upside of that? Anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about, because that isn't necessarily honest, candid feedback. If I said, hey, anybody have any feedback on my glasses? What did you think? Then I guess I've opened myself up, but this was like over a taxi Instagram post or something. But find a place, a safe place that you can post your music and get candid, honest feedback for your work. It's the cornerstone of what we do here at 52 Cues. It's literally the thing that 52 Cues is founded upon. It's why we started the Facebook group so many years ago. It's why we migrated over to Midi Networks. It's the thing. Every week, we post up our feedback thread. The cues that you listen to on the podcast episodes are taken from folks who have posted up their cues. And they're getting feedback from all different folks in all different aspects of their career, whether they're seasoned pros or brand new. They're getting feedback. And so find a place, because once you kind of let your ego down, put yourself out there, and you realize that people who are giving you feedback, like at 52 Cues, they're giving of themselves because they want to help you, but also in giving feedback, they are getting better themselves. Because by doing this is, in academic terms, this is called peer review. The process of giving someone feedback actually increases your understanding of the thing that you are learning yourself. It's this very fascinating pedagogical magic trick. If you want to get better at something, then analyze somebody else's and give them feedback on it. It's not enough just to say, I don't like this, but hey, this isn't working, and here's why. And now suddenly you're starting to create and connect neurons and concepts. And that's the whole reason peer review exists. It's what we do in the mastermind group. It's a really, really big part of the mastermind groups here at 52Qs. But even still, find a place that you can post your cues and get feedback from folks who you trust, to be honest, and trust on some level to kind of know what they're talking about. Which is why like Instagram isn't necessarily the best spot to get honest, candid feedback. So 52Qs is a great place for this. We're not the only place for it, and if 52Qs isn't your jam, then that's cool. I've mentioned several times before the Make Music Income Discord is really, really good, especially if you like Discord and like kind of the real-time ephemeral nature of Discord, which I have a little tough time with. It's my favorite and really one of the only production Discords I even participate in these days. But things can go by really, really fast. So maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm just too old for it, I guess. But I'm much more of a message board brain, and so 52Qs works for that. It works really well. But speaking of message boards, Taxi has amazing forums that I don't even think you have to be a Taxi member to join those. Post up your cues, your thoughts, feedbacks. Obviously, it's more geared for people submitting to Taxi, but their peer review, their peer-to-peer forums are great, are really, really great, to the point where I've actually made connections with other composers, which led to library placements through forum connections. Meaning somebody heard my music on the forums and said, hey, let's collaborate. We collaborated, those got published, and then I got picked up by that library. Taxi never saw a nickel of that relationship. But those forums are really, really, really good. There are some other forums like the vicontrol.net is a really good forum that has some really heavy hitters in the industry which participate in there. So I'd encourage you to go there. But 52Qs, like I said, that's the cornerstone of that. And the feedback from multiple sources from folks in different areas of their career is super valuable once you kind of put your ego on hold and once you open up yourself to what they're saying and how you can work those into your own cues, how you can improve yourself. But getting feedback is so valuable. I just this morning finished up final cues for a library and an album project of Crime Tension, and every single submission, every single one, had numerous feedback notes. I didn't one shot. That's the way when I submit something and then I get no notes. Yes, go ahead and submit deliverable waves to me. I call that one shotting. I one shot that boss, right? I didn't one shot any of those submissions. The last submission, I only had one teeny tiny note for something at the very, very beginning. I mean, literally that was it. And then so I two shot that boss, but every single one, all 10 cues on the album had notes. Some of them were very extensive, very specific, very targeted, surgical precision type of feedback. And for somebody who's been in the industry quite a while, have absolutely had my share of tension cues and writing those types of cues, to get feedback, at first was like, oh man, not like, what do you know? But oh, that's kind of a drag. But then I opened myself up to him and thought to myself, wow, this is like a clinic. This publisher is giving me a clinic, a 10-track clinic on how to improve my tracks. And I can say, without question, that my mixes today are better than they were 2 months ago when I started submitting for this project. To the point where I incorporated a new mixing process using a plugin that I already had. But his feedback forced me to dig a little deeper, to learn a little bit more, which then improved my music. And there are things that I will do from here on out that are a direct result from opening myself up and receiving honest, candid feedback. Because I have blind spots. Regardless of how long I've been in the industry, I have things I don't know. I have aspects of my music that need to improve. So while one-shotting, a submission is great, I'm not necessarily growing when I do that. And so just during last night's live stream, I was talking that I am super thankful that I got that type of feedback, because it shows that they care, that they gave the time, and it wasn't just a flat rejection, or even worse, it wasn't giving up on the cue and accepting it into their library, knowing it probably won't ever get placements. I mean, that publisher absolutely earned their publishing share for this album, 100%. There's a reason they get 50% of the royalties, because that's how it's done. That's how it's done. So finding a safe place that you can get good, honest, candid feedback on your work. And when I say safe, again, I mean, professionals or like-minded people whose intent isn't to tear you down, but to lift you up by giving you critique and feedback on your cues, even if that means things that you need to improve. That's what I mean by safe place. Finding those homes, whether it's 52 cues, Discord, Taxi, or whatever. So that was number 3. And then finally, number 4. The fourth way that I think you can get better at writing music that have nothing to do with specific theory or production techniques is just keep writing, friends. Just keep writing. Put your hands to the work. Open up the DAW and just start writing. Without getting overwhelmed with what you don't know. Without getting overwhelmed by not having the right tools, without getting overwhelmed because you think it's crap. Just keep writing. Because ultimately, quantity leads to quality. I've talked on the channel before, is it quality versus quantity and all of that? And there's something to be said about needing, a high output of cues just for numbers, because the way royalties stack up, it really is a numbers game. But that doesn't mean you necessarily need to be cranking out 20 cues a week. Good Lord. But it's the doing, it's the repetition, it's the practice of the craft that will ultimately improve. No amount of theory videos you're watching, no amount of learning how to, to finger an E Phrygian Lydian scale or something, no amount of studying this or that production technique, no amount of new plugins, no amount of new string libraries, no amount of lessons, masterminds, master classes, no amount of subscriptions. No amount of forums, Reddit threads. No amount of that is going to improve your writing more than actually just doing it. Just write. Right within your boundaries, right with the tools, right within what you know. Find that straight line and just write. Even if it's terrible, that's okay. You are looking to improve your craft, and that only happens by doing the thing. If you want to learn to swim, you can study swimming. You can study all the physics of water. You can study the best swimmers in the world. You can watch YouTube channels about how amazing swimming is. You could get all the best swimming gear. You can have the tightest Speedo, and you can even have that little skull cap. You can go buy the most expensive Michael Phelps endorsed goggles. But until you jump in the water, you won't improve as a swimmer. Because only by jumping in the water will you learn how you react to the current and how you need to do this and do that and how those muscles all work together. All the studying in the world, all the gear in the world, none of it matters if you're not putting your hands to the craft. And everybody knows that I'm also talking to myself, right? Right. This might as well be a mirror here. Because I need to tell myself that. See my previous, episode about procrastination and the things that get in the way of those bad habits. But just do the thing that you have told yourself, the universe, your family, that's the thing you want to do. Just go do the thing. Because that's the only way. I don't want to say it's the only way because I just gave you 3 other ways to get better. But that's the single best way to improve your writing is to write. Stop studying writing. Stop telling yourself that you don't have the right gear or the abilities or the time to write. Just freaking write. And then when you're done writing, put it out there. Put it up on a forum. Who cares if it's terrible? Because the next time you go to write, when you go to write your second cue, it will be better. There will be something in that second cue that will be an improvement, no matter how small. There will be something that you've learned from that first cue that you can carry forward into your second cue. And no matter how incremental it is, that is what this is all about. That's how you grow. That's how your compositions get better. All of these other things, all of these other aspects orbiting your process all feed into doing the thing. Opening the DAW, putting your hands on a keyboard, taking out the pencil tool, start popping in MIDI notes. Start something, finish something, put yourself out there, put it up there for review, and move on. Keep writing. Yeah, that's as simple as I can make it, folks. Because if you're not writing, then that's another thing you need to tackle. Either you don't enjoy the work or you're more in love with the idea of doing it than actually doing it, and that's a whole other bag of things. But write, put your stuff out there, find a forum. And I didn't mention also, you can take lessons. That's a way to get honest, candid feedback. If you don't want to put your stuff out there publicly because, you're creatively shy, which is understandable, then get a teacher. Get a mentor, a partner, an accountability partner. Saddle up with someone and say, hey, I would love your thoughts on that. We can kind of trade ideas. Yeah, it doesn't have to necessarily be like for the whole world to see. But ultimately, it's not about quantity over quality, but quantity, repetition, building those muscles, jumping in and swimming is what's going to lead to the quality. I told you I did that library project over the last 2 months. And although I didn't one-shot any of the cues, The notes got less and less and less. All the feedback got less and less over the course of that project, to where the last one was just a teeny tiny note, which means that I was growing, I was learning, I was improving with this library throughout the course of the entire project. And now I'm a changed person on the other side, compositionally speaking. So start by working with the tools you have, not with what you don't have. And that means your sounds, the libraries, the plugins, your abilities, right? The time you have. Work with what your tools can and can't do, and work those a lot. Practice those. Just keep writing. Number 2, don't overthink it. Don't get bogged down with everything you have to learn and everything you need to know from the theory side of things, or the how many tracks you need in the DAW, or all the mixing and mastering. Straightest line from point A to point B, and do the work. Number 3, get feedback, whether it's a forum like 52Qs or coaching sessions like which you can book through me or somebody else, your local community college, or go to Guitar Center or whatever. Do the work, which is number 4. Just keep writing. Just keep putting your hands to the thing that you've told yourself, you've told your friends, your family, you've told the universe that you want to do. And that, I guarantee you, will lead to you becoming a better composer. Thoughts? What do you think? Do you have anything you would add to the list? Do you have anything you would take off of this list? Do you have thoughts on my fake glasses? Regardless, I'd love to hear from you. Please let me know in the comments below. I do read all the comments and I make an effort to respond to them, or at least give them a little heart. But I do appreciate your feedback on that. When we return, we're going to take a quick break. But when we return, we're going to take a listen to Never Look Back by Reed Gesteland. And this was a post or a submission for a taxi brief looking for campaign cues. And I think we've listened to another one, but this was actually rejected. It was a return. And I wanted to kind of unpack maybe what led to that return. But we're going to listen to that on the other side of this break.
Hey y'all, I'm Shannon Croft, and I want to tell you that the 52Qs podcast is made possible by viewers and listeners just like you, composers and producers who are looking for a better way to connect and collaborate. You see, 52Qs isn't just another website selling static, pre-recorded videos to a mass audience. It's a fun, vibrant, and positive community that comes together online for sharing cues, getting feedback, and discussing what's up in the production music industry. You'll find both personalized feedback and live interaction, which are the best and fastest ways to grow your skills and earn more placements. The best part is that the 52Qs community is absolutely free. And when you're ready to take your career to the next level, we offer friends and family subscriptions which unlock weekly live streams, live interactive group feedback sessions, monthly interactive workshops, and more. Head over to 52qs.com and sign up today. And while you're there, check out our personalized feedback videos, private lessons, and of course, merch. I can't wait to see you at 52qs.com.
That was Never Looked Back by Gesteland, and I do hope I'm pronouncing that name correctly. So his thoughts were, he said, so this track was a return from Taxi. I'm not surprised it was a return, and the critique was spot on. I was told that the melody should have continued throughout instead of being semi-absent in the middle of the track. However, I sometimes find that the Taxi critiques don't always assess all of the areas that need improvement for the track to be a forward. Therefore, I was hoping for some feedback here, especially from a mixing and mastering, or from you mixing and mastering pros who can professionally assess where the track needs help. And so this was a campaign underscore, and really these kind of uplifting, campaigny type of cues. I can imagine a library looking for them because we're getting into, at least here in the U.S., midterm elections and starting to see some campaign ads pop up around areas. Let me tell you what I feel is going really right here. First of all, I think it is a good melody, and I think the energy for the cue is spot on. That kind of right, it feels kind of newsy, which I think is absolutely okay. So I think energetically speaking, I think we're on point here. The length is about 1.5 minutes, and so it might be a little short. I don't remember what the brief, if they said, but it did feel a little short. Mixing wise, it feels super low, boomy. And if I have any guess, it's all of the toms. There's just reverb, low-end reverb, boominess just really kind of running amok in the mix. And so it's just thickening up everything. And like I said, I imagine it's the drums. I don't know if they're big impacts or something like that, but so many of these type of cinematic or trailer, big epic libraries that have big impacts and tom hits and those kind of things, the reverb is just out of control to the point where, like with Damage, for example, I love Damage and Damage 2 by Heaviosity. It's great, but the first thing I do nearly every time I load up a Damage patch is I roll off the lows. I take almost all of the hall or the reverb out, leave it relatively close, because I would much rather have a drier sound going into my own reverbs, rather than having this reverb from this library and this reverb from this library, and this sound has this convolution, blah, blah, blah. And it can get really super muddy. And so that's what I think primarily is going on here. The low end is really running amok, which means that the strings are getting really, really buried in the mix. I'm not a fan of that dominant 7 chord right there. And so dominant 7 chords are interesting because, like, when we're learning music theory, speaking of learning music theory, we learn that the dominant 7, the 5 to the 1, is the strongest strongest tension to the resolution, because we have the tritone, and the third or the fourth wants to go down to the third, and the 7 wants to go up to the 1, and so it creates this super dissonant interval, the tritone being resolved to a super consonant interval, the major third. Right? On paper, it makes sense. However, in application, this is just me now, with these types of cues, dominant 7 chords just sound a little hokey. They're just not, they don't give you that sense of like uplifting tension. And I think the better choice there is, instead of the dominant 7 chord, going to a 5 sus chord, which is why you hear like sus chords all the time. You hear sus chords all the time in this type of uplifting orchestral type music. That's a But if you did like a 4/3 suspension instead of the dominant 7 going, I think that's going to give you a better feel. Yeah, and like you said in your notes here, right at this point, instead of going to something new, I would have continued on this main melody one more time through, maybe with an octave stack on top of it, bum, 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 bum. Or just keep it and just keep the melody cooking and let that descending bass line. And so here we are, we're 53 seconds in, and we're already into our third section, right? And so, which I think which is a different string pattern there. Probably could have benefited a little bit from pulling back the percussion energy. It feels like the drums are just kind of all the time. And the fact that the reverbs are running away from us kind of exacerbates this issue. Would probably pull the energy back. Whoops. Pull the energy back a little bit. And if we're going to, let me back up. If we're going to pull the melody out, which I think around the minute mark is a good place to do that, to pull the melody out, just to give our ears a break. But that only really works if we kept the melody cooking all the way up until the minute mark. All right, if we're going to reintroduce the melody, we need to kind of onboard some energy, some swells, something to help. Right, we need some cymbal swells, some timpani rolls, or something if we're wanting to stay, within the orchestral milieu. Then that would be using, orchestral transitional materials like cymbal swells, timpani rolls, those types of the sounds. It's like woodwind runs. Those are kind of like orchestral rising. It's risers. It's what EDM would take a noise sweep. Instead, in the orchestral realm, we might use a woodwind gliss or something. I wonder if you would should change up the drum patterns altogether. Because we have a ton of which is almost 30-second note energy. And then the drums are kind of cooking along with it. And I wonder if maybe we should gear it back even more. Like boom boom boom. So doing this type of energy as opposed to like the drums scale back, which will create greater rhythmic separation from your strings, which are just booking, but your drums come back a little bit as well, right? So it creates a separation rhythmically. Mm-hmm. And now I would not veer away from our primary melody here, not without really keeping the melody happening. If you want to have this kind of horn going on top, then keep the lower horn, I guess, like the descant, is kind of cooking, and then the other thing kind of goes up on top. Then it can soar on top of the melody, which is still existing. But this feels a little wandering. The melody feels a little wandering. Also, we need to tighten up the quantization there. The horn feels like it has some attack envelope, some legato transitions, which is making it feel draggy. So even if you look, in the region, you might see the MIDI note is right on the grid, but it's feeling super swimmy. Nice solid button there with the Piatti. That's really, really nice. But yeah, that horn. Yeah, it just feels a little swimmy. So I would tighten up the quantization there. Yeah, and as far as the title, I like the title, Never Look Back. It doesn't really overtly kind of scream, hey, this is about, campaign uplift or something. So I think the title is okay, but I think there might be a better choice for what we ended up getting. It might be like, let's see, let me give this like 15 or 20 seconds to see if I can't. Never look back. Never. See, never is a negative word, and I understand never look back, but what about always looking forward or forward thinking? So turning it from a negative statement to a positive statement, I think will psychologically add to the uplifting nature of what we have here. Never look back seems more like a trailer, like never look back. But if I'm thinking always moving forward, always looking ahead, that's what I would say. Always look ahead, or always looking forward. It's probably how I would change that, if that makes sense. But Reed, thank you so much for sending this along. Really, really appreciate you. As I mentioned, this was submitted for our week 29 feedback thread, and every single week over at 52Qs, we post threads and folks add their cues, they give feedback, they get feedback from others, and it's just it's a block party over there. But I would love to have you. It is a feature of what we do here. As I mentioned, it's the cornerstone of what we do here at 52Qs. So we would absolutely love to have you. To join 52Qs is absolutely free. I mean, we do have other, tiers and subscriptions. So if you're ready to kind of up your career and up your production process and get and push up to that next level, then why don't you check out our friends or family levels? Would absolutely love to have you. And if that's something, if you like feedback, if you like the feedback that I just gave, and that's something that you're looking for, which is direct feedback on your own cues, I also provide video feedback along with coaching one-on-one sessions. But the video feedback, I open up your cue, I look at the mix, I look at your structure, harmonic language, melodic language, instrumentation, titles, mix, levels, all of those things. So if that's something that you're looking for, and if you want to know more, then head over to 52qs.com/coaching. But that's going to do it for me today. Join us next week when I will be joined by very special guest, a recent Full Sail graduate and a longtime 52Qs community member, Greg Fellman, who took on his education, becoming a music production student and graduating with his bachelor's in music production at a very ripe age. Well, I don't want to say the age. I'm going to let him say it. Let's just say he is an adult student who had an entire career and returned to following his passion in life of music production. So you don't want to miss my chat with Greg Fellman, an award-winning composer who had many of his cues, I think 4 cues selected for the recent Full Sail Hall of Fame ceremony. So you don't want to miss that. That is what's coming up next week. But that is going to do it for me today. I hope that you had an amazing week 29, and I know that your week 30 is going to be filled with lots of productivity, and the universe is smiling at you for doing the thing that you are here to do. So thank you so much for joining me. Until next time, peace. The 52Qs podcast is copyright 2022 Dave Croft, all rights reserved. The music played on the podcast is copyright of their respective owners and is used for educational purposes only. For more information, including joining the 52Qs community and submitting your cue for consideration on the podcast, head over to 52qs.com.